Hi there, and welcome back to the Message Marketing Pod. I'm your host, Christopher Melotti from Melotti Content Media, and this is another special episode into corporate identity, but let's get a bit more practical today. We've been talking over the last few episodes about what corporate identity is and how it works, but let's now give it some practicality and some tangibility when it comes to business application. I'm going to introduce our two guests, and then we're going to get Darlene to throw out a bit of a curveball, and then we're going to explore it and brainstorm it in its real application. So first, Kristin, do you want to introduce yourself? Then I'll throw to Darlene, and then Darlene, you can set the gauntlet down. Kristin?
Absolutely. Hello, Chris. Hello, Darlene. Good morning. My name's Kristin Hancock. I'm from Swatch. We are a brand identity and design agency, and we create the foundations for strong brands.
Wonderful. And Darlene?
Hi, Chris. Hi, Kristin. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Darlene Mattiske-Wood, and I'm CEO of Australian Military Bank. And I am really interested, obviously, in corporate identity, but also in strength of leadership and alignment in organisations. I have a strong background in strategy, so this is always really interesting to me. But my challenge is more about how you support organisations when it comes to Net Promoter Score or customer satisfaction. Our Net Promoter Score in Australian Military Bank is very, very high. It usually is in mutual banks, which is fantastic. But I sometimes hear other individuals in different corporate industry saying, what can we do to improve our Net Promoter Score or customer satisfaction? And I thought, given that that's a really good topic, that perhaps we could actually throw around some ideas about how we would help other people in that
and how
space.
It has relevance to corporate identity, definitely. Yeah.
And does it, I guess, is the question. Because you're talking about your customer. Why can't you just say nice things to them and survey them at the right time after you've done something really nice, or have a look at some products and do a few giveaways?
Yeah, give them a few. Look, let me set the context for everyone listening and watching. So NPS, Net Promoter Score, is basically a series of questions that gets asked to customers. And what that is it's like, would you recommend our business to others? And it's a really good, a simple measure to test how effective your marketing and your positioning and reputation is around the customer service and satisfaction in your industry. Now, what Darlene is asking is, when clients and customers come to you and say, or, even if it's your own business and you say, how can we improve customer satisfaction NPS score? And you go, yep, give them some pretty pictures and some giveaways and that'll make them happy. Often that doesn't lead to actual lasting result. And so what we want to do is talk about how corporate identity, which is the internal definition of how your corporate functions and how you unify your workforce so that they've got an internal ethos and a strength inside. How does that permeate into the market? Kristin, do you want to start? I can follow up, then throw with Darlene, and we'll just brainstorm. Kristin, do you want to start?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So look, when we tend to see this issue crop up, interestingly, we are getting a client who's extremely frustrated. They're a long way down the road because their natural tendency is to revert to the types of things you've just suggested there, Chris, whereas, well, why don't we give giveaways, or, is it the service that we're offering? Is our product priced too expensively, etc. So the first thing that we do is we consider to try and isolate what is the root cause. So we usually start off with an audit around their brand and around their identity and specifically around the corporate identity to see if we can isolate exactly where their challenges may be occurring. And there's so many areas where you can find a challenge here. One, it can be a miscommunication or a misunderstanding or a misapplication of their values. It could be their value proposition. It could be an articulation of what it is that they're trying to provide in terms of market positioning. So where are we relevant to the competitors? And is the customer understanding that relevance? And is that customer understanding how we're unique compared to others? And it can also be some of the most basic aspects around, well, what communication and priorities are actually coming from the leadership team, and how is the leadership team actually engaging across the organisation? So do we have motivated employees?
Yes.
So this this can quite often be an external symptom of an internal problem. So it's about going through each of and that's why we usually suggest we call it the audit or the review of their identity. So we look at a number of different areas to see whether we can actually isolate where the problem is. Usually it's not one thing. Usually it's a number of different things that are out of alignment so that there's no consistency and clarity across the organization. But it all leads often to one aspect, and that is that there's a disconnect between the people in the organization, the service or product they're trying to sell, and the customer. So how do we isolate that?
I'm with you, Kristin. Like, I think you basically summed it up really, really well. Is that I think that when clients come to myself and Kristin and everyone for looking for improving satisfaction and customers, the first thing, like Darlene suggested, was the first thing that people do is they go to that knee-jerk, superficial reaction, which is, oh my gosh, we need to invent our product, reposition everything, we need to like change everything on the external, and they go, let's hope that this lasts. But the problem that does is it's painting a wall that isn't fully constructed, right? And what I mean by that is that internally, your business needs to believe it, right? So if you say, all right, team, our NPS score is reducing because people are saying that we're not very nice, right? So what we need to do is we need to feel nicer, right? So everyone be nice. Everyone change our website writings to say that we're a nice team. Everyone pretend that we're nice. Everyone say that we're nice and put up a mask and do it. And that's where the cracks start to form, especially today. People aren't just like, oh, okay, I'll just do it. People today,
because exactly. What does nice look like? What is nice?
And exactly. And so what it takes is when you build your corporate identity, it's getting your internal team together and deciding what your business stands for, right? What is, like Kristin said, what is nice? What's our ethos, our vision, our mission, our direction, our culture? What do we stand for? What do we want to do that we're comfortable with that gives us energy? Because once it starts from internal and then it permeates outwards, that's when you start to see that NPS score and customer satisfaction increasing because your team are united, they live and breathe it, right? Rather than being artificial and being like, all right, let's just make it look like it. So I feel like the way I would address this, Darlene, is I would go into a business and say, what's the internal like temperature check going on? You know, when's the last time that you got the team together or the leaders together and decided where the business is, what it stands for, what's the direction, what's our internal culture, what adjectives do we use to describe our values and benefits? I know that they sound like a list of like a bucket list, but it's important because if your internal team don't believe it, then your customers won't believe it. Darlene, what do you think?
Absolutely. What I normally do is I would actually, similar to what you both mentioned, get in and have a look at the foundations in the organisation from all of your staff management and everything that's going on, values, your vision, strategy, do that all on those on all of the foundations within an organisation, and because your staff engagement is you're probably suffering in that space as well, more than likely if your customers are happy, and especially if it's been going on for a while. The link between the customer journey, so looking end-to-end processes in an organisation is really important because if there's frustration and bottlenecks issues for your customers, they will be there for you as well. So we actually look at those layers and happening in an organisation. You also are looking for endpoints and problems with your people inside the organisation, much as you are external customers, because your people are a reflection of the identity of the organisation.
That's a very good point.
If you don't actually look at that, you're missing out on a key. I mean, who deals with your customers, your people, the processes? It could be you do them online. Where are pain points that don't actually reflect what you're trying to achieve with your customers? So, looking at journeys for your customers and where touch points and your missing mark. That becomes really important because if you're not going to the level, then it's a bit of paper mache, over the top of it. And I've seen great work being done around identity, but not going to the level of where processes and end-to-end journeys are in an organisation that are frustrating for staff and are frustrating for customers. So that's a really key, important area to look at. But
Kristin, like, what do you think about practical applications like Darlene was saying? Like, you're talking, like where it comes to like building that business case that Darlene was saying around the journey.
Yeah, look, picking up on what Darlene was saying, I thought she brought out two really good points there. One
Mm,
is um, mapping that customer journey. But what she's saying there is not just the customer journey, but also the internal people and the processes along that as well. So, because her overriding point was the external challenges around NPS are actually a reflection and they're mirroring the internal problems. So, I thought
mm,
they were two really, really sound points. And key to making sure that, okay, so how do we address this? Because if we've got an external problem, there's 99% sure that we're actually mirroring something internally. Start with your processes, map the journey, but map the touch point that the customer feels on that journey, but also what your employees are doing, and engage with those employees to work out where the bottlenecks or the problems are. So that's when I think what she's talking about there is that's all about identification of the original issue. What we then do
mm,
about the issue, that's a separate discussion. So how we then say, okay, what aspect of, we are strategists around and implementers around identity and corporate identity. That's our passion. So we would have a solution for each one of those. But until we've really nailed down where the challenge lies, whether it's at a grassroots level because there's a lack of communication from leadership, or there's not enough training, or there's a lack of articulation, or whether it's a senior leadership challenge around they're not operating within the frameworks, they're not communicating consistently, they haven't articulated these frameworks, and therefore there's a lack of trust throughout the
oh,
organisation. They're very different issues, but the way that Darlene was explaining it, I think you would definitely, yeah, you're definitely gonna get to the root cause of that.
I think so.
yeah,
Tell
just
me
had a
if it's
quick,
better.
Yep.
yeah, it's much
Yeah,
better.
Um,
totally.
oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Um, there's another one. I want to throw another challenge out there.
Sure.
What about where you might be asked to sort of work with an organisation,
Mm,
and it's a little bit about that, people trying to do more with less, but it's
yeah.
where innovation is happening. So innovation is going really well. They've got a framework for projects, and um, they've implemented initiatives to support innovation,
Yeah.
but there's more and more and more being asked to do in projects and in innovation, and staff are becoming tired and disenfranchised with the constant focus on the new. And
Mm,
on top of that, it seems to be that the ability to deliver or implement on the new is really lacking. So,
mm,
we're introducing new projects, but we can't get anything off the ground.
Yep.
What
right.
do you do?
So is it so what you're saying is that in the past the team have been known to be quite agile and innovative thinkers, but now because we've got smaller workforces, leaner organizations, and things are spread thin, that people are just getting by doing their jobs, let alone thinking outside the square. And so how do we combat that? Ah, got it. Yeah, that's a good
You might
question.
not know.
Oh,
It might
yep.
not be that they're trying to do more with less. There's just a sense that you're asking me to take on that, but I've already
Mm.
got my day job.
Mm.
I
Uh,
get that.
yeah,
And we saw this in Google. Like I remember Google prided themselves on like years ago saying Google gave like employees half a day every week to think about something innovative. And that was something they touted for years. And then one day it just disappeared. And they said we have no time for that anymore. And then they stopped doing encourage. I remember when I was like early in my career, I was in my early 20s, and like we went to a Google conference and they were like, we give our employees that half an hour, but now that's gone. The point is that, like you said, Darlene, is that businesses are now going like, no more time for that rubbish, we've got to, and you know what? That's an interesting thing because the way I do it in my business is I encourage innovation in their daily task. And I don't say to them, all right, team. There's, this time is allocated for innovation. Think differently, because I feel like that is too staggering and too unnatural. What I try and do is I try and say, keep a lookout for ideas of what we can do in your normal work. So, as part of their normal workflow, I want them to think differently. So yeah, yesterday this very thing happened. Were looking at LinkedIn, and my marketing manager does a lot of LinkedIn stuff. And I said to her, she said, "Oh, Chris, I've looked at the latest contacts that you've connected. Here's a list." And I encouraged her and I said, look, I think that as you know, at Melotti Content Media, we trying to think innovative strategically. We do this for our clients. We have to do this for ourselves. What can you do with that list? And that spurred her to then think about how we could use that list better. And then what I did is it reminded me to then reinforce the fact that we need to be thinking more innovatively. So bringing it back to something more generic for practical wise, what I would be doing is reinforcing the fact that we need to instill that in our corporate culture, and our unifying central positioning here inside your corporate identity is reminding people that, that's what I mean. Kristen, I'll throw you in a second, but for me, I think that gentle reminder of the fact that people have that space to try. Look, I find my staff react really well to that. Is reminding them you can make mistakes, you can suggest things and run it by me, or run it by the team. Because honestly, that like people overcomplicate this stuff. Me saying to my marketing manager, "Don't forget you can try and like think about things a bit more and be encouraging." That encouragement honestly does half the work, because she immediately felt, it wasn't like she felt reprimanded. She felt inspired because she was like, "Oh, let me have a think about it." And with AI tools and things today, we can run ideas by AI and get a bit of an idea and expand our mind and cohabit there. But that, again, it comes back to that corporate identity of what do we stand for? If your team are afraid to innovate, it's probably because you haven't set that framework for them to actively think. Kristin? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Kristin. Can I just jump in just on this?
Always.
Thank you. I think that's about innovation in how do you take your operating model and the work that you do within that operating model and apply innovation. Now, I think that is really, really important. But what I've seen, and I saw this out of the Royal Commission into banking and after the global financial crisis, I'm talking years ago, where there would be whole project structures set up.
Yep.
For innovative ideas. And I looked at some of the incredibly innovative ideas in the larger banks. What they had trouble with was actually, even when they brought leaders in to the project structure, actually getting those things off the ground and implementing them. And I think that's a common issue within a lot of organisations. Being able to use AI and being able to innovate as a continuous improvement, or how can we take that we're doing today and make that better, is one aspect. But the other one is where it's the big ideas, and we've got this fantastic idea, we're ready for implementation, and it just falls flat and doesn't get off the ground. That's the area I think that is and often what happens is that people are asked to do that as well as what they're doing already. That becomes a cause of burnout, etc. But how would you apply the concept of corporate identity to that particular problem?
It's a really good it's a good challenge, and also some great articulation from Chris there. I think the overarching challenge, that you originally outlined there, Darlene, I think there's one question that immediately popped into my mind was around the sustainability of the organisation, because you're actually asking it felt like you're asking too much of too few. So there's the question of, well, how does this organisation operate sustainably into the future? And that means what type of operating environment does it have? And this is the key to where corporate identity can really add in this situation, because it's got to have, if it has clarity of purpose, and it's got clarity of pillars, and it's got clarity of objectives and objection. But most importantly, it's got really succinct values that are lived values. They're not just the one-word style values that you often see, but they're actually lived and evidenced values. You can intertwine that. So you gave that that banking example where it was like, we have all of these great innovative ideas, but what it felt like from the surface there, what it really felt like when I heard that was there was a complete disconnect between the innovative idea and the purpose of the organization, and then the appetite and the lived values to implement that idea. So the leaders in the business couldn't see how that idea was going to benefit the achievement of their own objectives and then the bank's objectives. So if you have those aligned properly through this work that we all do around identity, then people understand how that innovation fits the puzzle, why they should do it, and their behaviours ensure that it happens. Now, some organisations are going to want to be less innovative than others. And that's how you articulate it in the values that you live and breathe. Whereas others are going to say, we exist to be innovative. If you're a Tesla, you all through your ingrained values, you're going to be right here. We want innovation, innovation, innovation. And that goes at the almost prioritizes over the day-to-day operational. Whereas other organizations that are more day-to-day operation and the actual execution of today's operation overrides the innovation side of it. So does that see how we use identity?
So what I've used a couple of different models before looking at. So if this is the organisation, so if we're a Google or innovative, an organisation that absolutely thrives and survives on innovation, the type of people and the way that you explain your culture and the structure that you set up to support that is different to a banking organisation. So your level of innovation is different.
Absolutely.
The skills and capabilities.
Absolutely.
And whether or not you have coloured rooms, fish tanks and bean bags, that sort of thing is different.
Ping pong table.
Goes right down to the look of your organisation and the culture that you describe and the skill set that you need and what you're rewarding in the organisation. And when it comes to project frameworks and taking on new, I think, Chris, you said absolutely you are often doing a lot with the same people. So you rely on the same individuals that are running the business as those that are actually leading up the implementation of new projects and things like that.
Yes.
So you're saying that you should. So Darlene, just to clarify that, you're saying that they have to be one in the same. It's not project director comes in for implementation of the innovation. You're saying, actually, no, this is day job, and whatever we do from an innovation perspective is actually implemented by our full-time employees.
You usually would have a project structure even in a small organisation.
Yes.
But you'll
have a PMO office, but they're aligned to the business.
You don't have the luxury of, plus if you want people to own it, they've got to be implemented.
Totally.
So you've got to have them on board with the project, and to a certain extent, they also have to lead and be the business owners of projects. But understanding and being clear from the leadership level as to what the priorities are when you're selecting projects. And I think the other aspect, having a framework to know what to stop doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Becomes critically important, because if you keep loading on, you're going to actually get a break point. So being able to re-identify what you're doing and saying, does this fit into the future? How do we do it better? Okay, that's going to be a big project, but at what point are we going to see the return so that we can stop doing X? And that all does fit with, because your corporate identity is also looking at your operating model, and
absolutely,
saying,
and the clarity of purpose.
Yeah. And so understanding the priorities becomes critically important, where you don't have everyone running around with their pet projects. You're all leaning in as a leadership team with clarity on what you're going to focus on, why and how, but importantly, what you're going to stop doing, why and how is all part of that, I think.
Yeah, and a simple example, if I was to reflect externally from yourself, Darlene, might be every time you look at a new project, you're saying, how is this going to benefit our members and make their engagement with us better?
Yeah, and how does that help us achieve our vision and our strategic objectives to support where we're going as an organisation and
Absolutely.
Always are measuring those things. It's a constant. And the more that you can replicate yourself, so you have a leadership team that do the same, the better it is. And then that also needs to fit the culture that you're aligning in the organisation. So, for example, are you going to give your life savings to someone who does not fit the part of what your target market would consider is a trusted banker? And it doesn't matter what you may think as an individual. And I've had to do some of this with people where having conversations with a group of staff and saying, who's our target market? So take Australian Military Bank. What they do and the way that they're trained on a day-to-day basis is to a certain standard. Now, if they walk into a banking environment and that standard is a better fit for, say, a Google or a record company or an artistic design group, their perception, it doesn't reflect them. So what they're looking for is, hang on, I'm going to put my money with you. We've got to consider what does your target market expect? What are you looking for? And reflect that in the way even your people actually are presenting and behaving and delivering. And I think a lot of organisations, they naturally do that because they think, oh, okay, this is who we're appealing to. But I do think that you've got to keep assessing that. And I won't mention any names, but I think there's a really innovative company that did some great things in the way that they were delivering customer service. That is now getting really tired and annoying in terms of they haven't looked back at, hang on, what are our customers want now? What's our target market? What are they seeking? And tying people up with too many processes, too many touch points, where it's not simple to get something quite simple, like you just want to buy a product and you've got to go into a queue and you've got to have made an appointment. Like, honestly, I know we can't deliver that here. You've got to go up to this floor, I know. That might have been
I experienced it the other day. Yes.
That might have been quirky once, but that's the sort of thing that really is a reflection that they haven't gone back and said, oh, hang on a second, are we on point with the way in which we're delivering to our target market? Are they getting annoyed with us? Is it still cool and trendy? No, it's a bit annoying, actually.
Right.
I'll see if I can find something on Amazon. It's just I think that corporate identity drift or mismatch. Not continually checking who the target market is and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So we'll have to wrap this one up. I think we've given it a good practical go. So I think this has been a really good example of how the corporate identity translates into practicality, and so that hopefully everyone listening and watching was able to see how we can apply the principles of internal culture development and unity to real practical examples of increasing NPS and customer service and so forth. So is there anything to wrap up with for Kristin and Darlene before we close?
Not from me. I'm great. Thank you.
That was great.
Yeah, not for me, Chris. Thank you both, to you, Chris, and to Darlene. I think that was really insightful. Some good challenges posed there, Darlene. Thank you for that. And I think we got beneath the hood a little bit, so that was really good. Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this special episode into the Message Marketing Pod. This was in our corporate identity series where we talk about what the importance of corporate identity is. If you haven't listened to the other episodes, jump back and have a listen because they go into the nitty gritty of it all. Again, thank you, Kristin, and thank you, Darlene, for joining me today. And I look forward to many more episodes going forward.